What is up, everyone? Welcome to another Axie Infinity video. Today we are going to be going into what are good Axies and how you can pick them on the marketplace. So really aiming this video at all of you new players out there, and also maybe at some of you players who are just a little bit more inexperienced at the game or just getting into it and trying to elevate your game to the next level. So with that being said, let's get into it. Okay, so the big two questions here are, what are good Axies, and how can you identify them and purchase them on the marketplace? And the first big tool I'm going to give you here is this Axie Infinity tier list that I created, and it has all of the moves, and I have ranked them from S to F. So it's pretty straightforward, S being the best, F being the worst, same thing with A being the second best, and C being the second worst. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to prioritize our different categories of Axies, and we have 4 different categories of Axies. We're going to have our tank Axie, our damage dealer, our support, and our finisher Axie. And I'm going to go more into detail about these Axies here in a little bit, but just know for the tier maker, I have these set up where it says damage tier A, tank tier A, support tier A. Don't worry about the finisher. Finisher Axies are a little bit more complicated than just those 3 categories. But that's the main thing you guys need to know for this tier maker. Okay, so all we're going to try to do here is match these moves up as best as we can on the marketplace. And we're going to prioritize, obviously, the S, A, and B tier moves. And we're going to put less focus on the C tier. But just because it's C tier, I wouldn't say completely avoid them. I mean, there are some beneficial C tiers, but for this purpose, especially if you are a new player, I would really try and focus on your S, A, and B tier. Before we get into the marketplace, let me kind of clarify on what each type of Axie is. Okay, so we're just going to go in these categories. So our damage dealer Axie is going to be primarily our Axie that's going to focus on dealing the most damage. And for damage dealing Axies, I would say you need about 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 4 damage type moves, and potentially 1 support or tank move. For tank Axies, I would recommend either 4 out of 4 tank moves or 3 out of 4 tank moves with either a damage dealing move or a support tier move. Now, with support Axies, it is a lot more, it's not as cut and dry. So with support Axies, we are going to focus really on having 1 or 2 of very, very strong support moves, and maybe 1 damage move and 1 tank move. So support tier, I would make sure you get, I would say 1 or 2 support moves at the very least, and then kind of pepper in the damage and tank tier Axies. Now for our finisher Axie, I'm going to go into that one last, but our finisher Axie is really just an Axie that has probably more tank moves than anything, but it can survive on its own, and it has kind of a 1 versus 1 potential, 1 versus 2 potential. And a finisher type Axie is going to be an Axie that you put primarily at the back of your team. This is the Axie that you're going to rely on to finish the game, and that you're going to rely on to basically seal out a game in a 1v1 or 1v2 scenario. But again, I will explain a little bit more of what a finisher Axie is last. The reason why they're not on the tier list is they're more hard to find, and they're just very specific. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to hop into the marketplace here, and the first Axie we are going to try to find here is our tank Axie. And so what I want you to do is I want you to go to this filter here on the left and click on aquatic, reptile, and let's do dusk and plant. These are all Axies that can be considered a tank Axie if they have the proper moves. And another thing that I want you to do is click on stats, and we're going to filter these Axies, and I'm going to put 50, let's do 53 HP or higher. And again, we are going to match these Axies up with our tier maker, with our tier list. So I'm going to quickly scroll through some of these Axies, and I'm going to show you what some good examples of some tanks are, and I'm also going to give you some good examples of what bad tanks are and some things that you need to avoid. Okay, so the first example I want to give here is a good example of what a good tank Axie looks like, and it's going to look something like this. Again, it could be either the Aqua, the Plant, the Dusk, or the Reptile, but it's going to look something like this. And so the first thing we are going to look at here is these top two moves. You notice that one of them is purple, one of them is green, and as long as the top moves are either purple or green or vice versa, they're going to provide extra health to your Axie. So it's obviously going to be better for tank moves. So you want to prioritize Axies that have these green or purple moves at the top, as they will give you more health for your Axie. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at here are the abilities, and we have the Shiitake ability, which I believe I have here as a C tier tank move. But again, we can't. C tier doesn't mean they are terrible moves, it's just they are not as good as the A and the B tier moves. Then we have what is known as Zigzag, and I believe I have Zigzag here as a B tier, B tier tank move, so another good tank move to have there. And Carrot, which I have here as a A tier tank move, as you can see here. Yep, there's the Carrot. And then we have Lagging, and like I said, we can either have, generally you want to have 4 or 3 out of 4 tank moves, and then we can, sometimes have something else. Then we have Lagging, which I believe I have here as a B tier support move. So yeah, that is an example of what a good tank Axie will look like, and it's actually one of the cheaper tank Axies as well. I'm kind of looking at cheapest to I'm kind of looking at the cheapest Axies for you guys, because I know a lot of people are on a budget and they want to know kind of what can they scalp off the market. Here's another good example. We have two pretty good tank moves here, and we have the top two are green moves, which will give more HP, and these two moves here, the Hero and Confident moves, are both kind of support moves, but they provide a lot of value for you as a tank as well. So here is a bad example of what a tank would look like that you might filter on the marketplace and see. So here is a so-called tank, but like I said, it's a bad example of what a tank looks like. So as you can see, the top two, we don't see either the Plant or the Reptile move, the green or the purple. We do see the Bidens, which is a very good tank move. However, notice these moves here, Silence Whisper and Strawberry Shortcake. Well, they offer 0 defense. 0 defense. And as we can see here on our tier list, we have the Forest Spirit, which is the Silence Whisper, unfortunately all the way in the F tier. That means completely avoid that move. It's not going to do you that much good. And then we have the Sweet Party, which is that strawberry looking thing, all the way down here in the C support tier. And then we have Pupe, I don't know how to pronounce it. And that is, I believe we have that in a B tier damage move. But yeah, this is not a tank Axie that we would prefer. Here is something that is a little bit kind of mixed, but again, we have this Ant move, and as we look on the tier list, this Ant move, also known as Chemical Warfare, is all the way in F. We want to avoid those types of moves. So we're going to quickly back out of that. Same thing with this Aqua tank. It has the Silence Whisper and the Strawberry Shortcake, and it's just not going to do you much as a front tank. And here is another bad example. We got the Silence Whisper, the Egg Bomb doesn't give you any defense, and this, the Aqua move, and then we only have 1 out of the 2 on the top. That's the Reptile, and that's not going to do you much use either. Here is a decent tank, but not something that is really great. As you can see here, most of these moves are all on the, B and C tier, mostly C tier to be honest. And then we have this guy here. It has some pretty good moves, but the top two are not either reptile or plant, so it is not going to be that good for you. So those are some things to consider when looking for your tanks. The top two, you want to prioritize plant and reptile kind of attributes here. So the green and the purple, which will give you more HP. And then these here, you really want to try and match them up on the tier list. Okay, the next type of Axie we are going to look for is the damage dealing Axie. And so what I want you to do here is go ahead and click clear filter, and we're going to be searching by parts now. I found this to be the best way to find good damage dealing type of moves. Really, all different types of Axies can be a damage dealer as long as they have the correct moves. And so yeah, what I want you to do is just click on parts. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to click a tier A move, and we're just going to try and match up as many parts as we can on the tier list. So I'm going to be doing the Revenge Arrow move. There it is. Okay, and again, I'm going to click a few good examples, or I'm going to do a couple good examples and a couple bad examples. All right, so again, starting off with a good example. So this would be a good example of a damage dealing Axie. You don't really worry about these body parts on the top too much with damage dealing Axies as a general rule of thumb. Sometimes they can matter, but for newer players, don't really worry about it. They don't matter that much for damage dealing Axies. So the Risky Beast move is going to do a ton of damage. It's all like 125 damage, and that's going to be on our tier list, and it is going to be in the tier A. We have Lamb, which is also going to be tier A. We have the Cuckoo, which is also a tier A, and we have the Hare, which is, I believe, also a tier A. So we have found a full tier A damage dealing Axie on the marketplace for less than 0.1. So, and it has 2 Christmas parts on it. So if I haven't picked this one up before you have, I would highly suggest this Axie. But this is a great example of what a damage dealing Axie looks like. So next up, I want to give you a bad example of what a damage dealing Axie looks like. And this will be a bad example. It does have this Risky Beast damage part, but as you can see here, the Catfish is really, I think it's on our tier C, and Catfish, I believe, is on the support tier. The Gerbil also going to be on the support tier, and Bamboo going to be as a tank move. So again, general rule of thumb, you want 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 4 damage dealing moves on your damage dealing Axies. Next up, we have another good example of a damage dealing Axie. We have the Risky Beast. We have the Trump move, which is I believe I have it put as a B tier damage dealing move. Then we have the Swallow, which is another B tier damage dealing move. And then, so that's going to be our 3 out of 4, excuse me. And then we have our Tiny Turtle, which is going to be as a, I believe, C tier support move, right? Or where did I put it? Maybe we have it as a, so it's actually a B tier support move. So we have a complete, basically good tier A move, and then the rest all good, B tier moves. So this would be another good example. Now this guy's an interesting case. So this one, it's gonna have the Risky Beast, and it's also gonna have the Death Mark, but it has the Mary, which is going to be I believe a B tier tank move. I believe I do have it there. Maybe I have it as a C tier tank move. I do. So C tier tank move. And then it has the cattail, which is an A tier tank move. So this Axie would actually be more of a support than it would be a damage dealing Axie. So with that being said, let's go into support. I think I gave you a couple good examples of what good Axies, what good damage dealing Axies are, and what kind of some bad examples of what damage dealing Axies are. Okay, our support Axie, also known as a utility Axie, is a little bit more complicated, but again, the same rule applies. We're going to be using our tier list, and as we said in the beginning of the video, we want to prioritize generally one or two of very strong support moves. And also, we're going to pepper in the damage and tank moves. So in this specific case, I'm going to look for a good support move and a good tank move. And that's going to really, help give us, our team a lot, or that Axie a lot of utility and provide a lot of support for our overall team. So I'm going to do the same thing here, just clear filter, and I'm going to look for a good example, some good examples and some bad examples of what support Axies are. Okay, so we decided to focus on the move Nemo. And again, Nemo is going to allow us to gain 1 energy when we combo it with another card. And so our first example that I want to pick here is this is going to be a good example of what a good support Axie looks like. And as we can see here, we have the Nemo, which is going to be on the support tier A list. We have Cuckoo, which is going to be a damage tier A. Then we have Lamb, which is damage tier A. And we have the Buzz, which I believe we have as a, do we put it as support or did we put it as damage? We put it as damage. So again, this Axie is going to provide you, it's going to have a decent amount of HP. It's going to be tough to get through. It's going to give you some extra, energy, also provide you a lot of extra shield, and it's going to give you a lot of utility, a very good support Axie. This would be a bad example, and you would look at this and see, and this is why I wanted to use this one as a good example of what a bad support Axie looks like, is you see the Pinsir, Nemo, and Imp, and you say to yourself, well, hey, all of those are on the support tier A. We want a maximum of 2 support moves, because once you get about 3 support moves, this Axie just doesn't do enough for you. It's just not going to do enough damage. It's really just going to kind of be a sitting duck. It's not going to, it's just not going to provide you that much utility. So yeah, I wanted to use this one as a bad example. So yeah, really looking for 1 or 2 support moves at most for support Axies. Next up, we have this one. It does have the Nemo, but look, these are all tank moves. So with support Axies, you want 1 or 2 support Axies, but you also probably want at least 1 good damage dealing move. And again, I wanted to use this one as a good example because it kind of culminates everything. It has the Nemo, it has the Mary. The Mary is going to be the defensive type of move, and it has the hero, so it has 2 support moves here, 1 defense, and then 1 damage dealing type of move. And so this would be a very balanced type of support Axie. Okay, before we get into finisher Axies, I want to kind of clarify that if you're a new player, you should really focus primarily on the first 3 types of Axies we talked about, which is the damage dealer, the support, and the tank. The finisher Axies is a lot more complicated, a lot more, I would say, advanced, not only to play with, but also to identify. And I will give you some good examples of what a good finisher Axie looks like. There's really no formula that I've noticed yet to specifically identify a good finisher Axies, but I'll just show you a couple good examples. So I will actually start with this one here. And so with this one here, you would look at this and think, well, this is more of a tank. However, when you look at the moveset, you're going to notice that a lot of these are more of the damage dealing moves when we look at the tier list. The Cactus being a damage dealing move, the Tiny Dino being a damage dealing move, and the Guitaro actually I think being a support move. And then we have Greenthorn, which is a tank move. So the finisher here, as we can see with the Tiny Dino, we need to be after round 4. So obviously this Axie doesn't want to be in the front to basically be eliminated before round 4. It's not going to get much value out of this. So this one would say, okay, Tiny Dino is more of a finisher type of move. Cactus as well, you know, it's a very good damage dealing move. And then Guitaro. So what you're going to want to do here is at the end of the game, you're just going to kind of want to snowball with your moves and just constantly do high damage moves while constantly either generating energy or just locking another player out. And that's why these types of Axies are so advanced. But this would be a good example of a finisher Axie. This one as well. It has the Chomp ability and it has the Gravel Ant ability. And as I said before, the main strategy behind this Axie is to lock the other player out. So we're going to lock the other player out with using stuns, with disabling their melee cards. Also, you could try and generate, more energy with Imp, and you just try and snowball with your moves. Same thing with this one. You're locking another player out by stunning, disabling range cards, and also preventing yourself from being killed with some high defense type of moves, and even Cuckoo, adding some more damage to your tiny turtle. So I hope this really clarified some what you guys thought about finisher moves or finisher Axies. And again, they're really hard to identify. They're really advanced, but I would really suggest them for a player after they get a little bit more experience with the game. Alright, the last thing I want to address is the breed count here. So when, obviously we're going to be prioritizing our tier list, how I explained for each different type of Axie. However, you're going to see up here it says breed count, breed count 2, breed count 0. So with the breed count here, all that you need to know with the breed count here is the lower the number, the better value you get out of that Axie. So breed count 0, if this happened to be a good Axie that we verified on the tier list, it having a breed count of 0 would make it more valuable because that means it's less expensive to breed. So again, breed count 2, breed count 0. If you have a high breed count, it's probably not going to hold a lot of value unless it has very good moves. Alright everyone, I hope this really explained how you can pick good Axies. It's really simple. Just follow the tier maker, follow the different types of Axies and how I explained it to you. The tank, the damage dealer, the support, and even the finisher Axies. And I think if you relate that over to prioritizing good moves on the tier list, you're going to be very successful in picking your Axies. I appreciate everyone watching. I know this was a pretty long video, but I hope you learned a lot. And if you have any questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section. Also, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out when people try to search for these videos. All right, I'll see y'all later. Peace.